The Las Vegas Raiders have lost back-to-back games and are now sitting at 5-7 on the regular season. The Raiders got off to a hot start after the firing of Josh McDaniels in Week 8 of the regular season, going 2-0, and after that the spirit of this team just looked so much better, and it really started to give us hope within the fan base that we could possibly turn this season around. Now in the past 2 weeks though, the Raiders lost a heartbreaker to the 8-3 Miami Dolphins, a game in which the Raiders were in it till the very end but came up just short. And this week we lost to the Chiefs after getting off to a red hot start, going up 14-0, but we failed to sustain that same success in the second half, which costed us the game. So with that being said, the Raiders are now sitting at 5-7 on the regular season with only 5 games left, which is pretty crazy to say. The regular season is almost over. Feels like it went by so fast this year, as it does every year. But with the Raiders being 5-7 at this point, the real question is the season over for the Las Vegas Raiders in terms of a playoff standpoint? Statistically speaking, at least according to the New York Times, there's currently a 1% probability of the Raiders making the postseason this year after that loss to Kansas City. So look, if you're a betting man, yeah, it's safe to say that the Raiders are likely not going to make the playoffs. Now, they did also have a little playoff scenario simulator, and in that simulation, if the Raiders finish the season with a 4-1 record, with that loss being to the Kansas City Chiefs, it showed that the Raiders' chances of making the playoffs would jump to 20%. So look, still not very great odds. But if we win out, if we go 5-0, then that jumps up to 80%. So essentially the New York Times is saying if the Raiders do not win out, they're not going to make the playoffs, more than likely. And currently the AFC playoff picture is looking like this. It's not looking too bright for the Raiders at this point. The Raiders are sitting at 12th, and we have 5 teams that are ahead of us, 2 of which are teams we will face in the final stretch of the season, being the Denver Broncos and the Colts. And also one of the teams is the Buffalo Bills, which is a team that holds the tiebreaker over us since they beat us in week 2. But needless to say, the Colts and the Broncos games are going to be must-win games if they want any shot to sneak into the playoffs. But with this being said, with the Raiders' playoff chances being very limited, does that mean that the Raiders at this point should just embrace tanking and trying to get a higher draft pick, especially in an NFL draft that is loaded at the quarterback position like it is in this year's draft? And look, I can kind of understand why some people might want us to tank. They might want, the next Caleb Williams or whoever it may be. But look, I think the Raiders at this point, they should not tank for the rest of the season, especially too since we're still not mathematically eliminated. I mean, I know it's a long shot, but crazier things have happened. The Raiders were in the same scenario 2 years ago, and we ended up going 4-0 and sneaking into the playoffs. And not only that, the Raiders should not tank also because for a couple different reasons that can really just determine the future of this team, of this roster, how we're going to look like in the future. And look, the first reason is because we need to figure out the head coaching situation. Antonio Pierce is still fighting for his job. I think Antonio Pierce knows and understands that his job is still on the line and it's not guaranteed, and he really needs to win as many games as possible to make his case to Mark Davis to hire him as a full-time head coach. And I love Antonio Pierce and what he stands for and what he brings to our team, but I also understand that the results have to back it up. I love how he was born a Raiders fan. He's from Compton, all that stuff. But he's got to back it up with some victories. And if the Raiders finish the season bad, if the Raiders, let's say we finish with like a 6-11 record or something like that, then that by no means does that guarantee him his job next season, especially too since he took over a team with a 3-5 record. And if he ended up finishing the season like 6-11 or something like that, well, you do the math. That's not a good record to back up his case to Mark Davis. Really, I think it's important for the Raiders to finish this season strong. That way we can build upon this team moving into the next season. And ideally, I'm hoping for some big wins that can really help turn this franchise around, the mentality of this team. Like, for example, I was really hoping we could beat the Chiefs this week. We weren't able to do it. But look, we're still going to have one more opportunity to beat them on the road in Week 16, on Christmas Day, on prime time. And look, if the Raiders could win that game, if they could upset the Chiefs, that would be just huge for the confidence and the morale of this team moving forward. And it could really just cement Antonio Pierce as our future head coach. So at the end of the day, there's still a lot on the line for this football team, for these players that are fighting for their jobs, and for this coaching staff in general. general. Like, there's just too much on the line for them to even think about tanking, so I don't see that happening whatsoever. But also another reason why I don't think we should do that is because we need to be as competitive as possible this season, because we need to continue to evaluate our rookie quarterback, Aidan O'Connell. The Raiders really need to continue to get into tough, close games where the offense needs to make plays to really evaluate what we truly got in Aidan O'Connell. I mean, last game, he looked overall pretty good. He made some really nice throws. In the second half, just the offense in general fell off. So it definitely wasn't a great game, but you know, O'Connell has had some interesting performances this season that makes him an intriguing prospect. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to see more before we can be sold on him to be the future quarterback of this team. And if the Raiders can go on a winning streak, let's say we finish the season 4-1 or something like that, and O'Connell plays well and he makes key plays to win us some games, and look, we may just have somebody to look forward to at the quarterback position. And on the contrary, if he struggles and he has some costly mistakes, well, in that case, we need to be in the market for a quarterback in the draft this year and essentially just let those two guys battle it out for the next few years. So when it comes to the Raiders, when it comes to the state of this team, look, even if we can't make the playoffs this year, there's still a whole lot in play for this team, in my opinion, and there's a lot of big games that will help determine what the future of this roster and this coaching staff will look like for the Raiders. Antonio Pierce really needs to galvanize this team to get some big wins moving forward down this stretch, and Aidan O'Connell needs to show us more before I'm sold on him moving forward. The Raiders are going to need a mini miracle to make the playoffs, but let's not forget 2 years ago we were in a similar situation and we won out. We went 4-0 and we snuck into the playoffs. The Raiders are going to have to, in my opinion, at the very least go 4-1. That would give us a 9-8 record, and you know, that might give us a chance to sneak into the playoffs. And even if we miss the playoffs, if we go 4-1, look, I'll be happy with the season. At the end of the day, I was just looking for some improvement from last year, and I think if we go 4-1, 9-8, I think that will give Antonio Pierce a very good shot to be the head coach. And at least at that point, we have a legitimate direction that this franchise is headed in. So really, no matter how we slice it, it's going to be tough for the Raiders to sneak into the playoffs. But if the Raiders can come out of the bye week healthy and motivated and regroup as a team, and we can handle business against the Minnesota Vikings at home, and then after that we're going to have the Chargers once again at home, you know, that's a very beatable team as well. And hey, you never know, at that point we would put ourselves in a good position. But as I said, I think we would have to go at the very least 4-1 in the stretch to have any chance. And just to recap on this video too, I wanted to touch on the other news that the Raiders came out with today. It looks like the Raiders have waived 2 different players. The first player that got waived was safety Roderick Teamer, which was definitely expected after he got arrested over the weekend on a DUI charge. And look, for obvious reasons, you know, we cannot condone that type of behavior, especially in this organization with what we've been through the past couple of years. So look, that definitely wasn't surprising to me. But the surprising move to me was the fact that we released veteran free agent cornerback Marcus Peters, which I fully did not expect. It looks like the Raiders will save approximately $1.5 million in cap space by doing this. And look, honestly, I don't mind the move. I mean, he wasn't going to be back next year anyways. He hasn't looked very good this year. He's made some plays when it comes to turnovers, but, you know, I expected more from Marcus Peters. And really the biggest letdown for me when it comes to Marcus Peters is that he's shown very poor effort on tape, and that's a huge problem. And not only that, he's had a serious tackling issue this year. And really at this point, yes, he was able to generate like a turnover or two, but at this point, the way he's been playing, he's been more of a liability than he's been an asset to this defense, in my opinion. But Raider Nation, that's my thoughts and opinions on the season moving forward and the latest news with Marcus Peters. But I definitely want to get your guys' feedback on this topic. Let me know in the comment section down below. And for anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.